Welcome to The Bone, the podcast that goes deeper. Here we cut through the noise and get straight to the core of the issues that matter. From real stories to raw truths, we dive deep into the conversations that shape our world and challenge our thinking. We're not afraid to dig in and get to the marrow of it all. Whether it's life, culture, or business in sports medicine, we're here to break it down raw and real. No filters, no fluff, just to the bone. With your host, Shelby Daly, we're getting to the bone. This is a clinically pressed, approved CEU podcast. Find the quiz to gain credit at clinicallypressed.org/courses. Clinically Pressed Company, making the complicated simple through results that give back. Find out more at clinicallypressed.org. Let's get started. Welcome back to the Bone, the athletic training podcast hosted by Shelby Daly and some guy she found in the help wanted portion of Home Depot. Oh, that'd be me. Today we're back to the book club and we'll be working on Chapter 4 of Never Split the Difference by Chris Voss. Chapter 4 is Beware Yes and Master No. And to get things started, we're going to give you the first paragraph from Chapter 4. Let's paint a scenario we've all experienced. You're at home just before dinner and the phone rings. It is, no surprise, a telemarketer. He wants to sell you magazine subscriptions, water filters, frozen Argentinian beef, or Brazilian, whatever you like. To be honest, it doesn't matter, as the script is always the same. After butchering your name and engaging in some disingenuous pleasantries, he launches into his pitch. So, Shelby, have you ever been there?
I mean, lately with the political calls, yes.
Oh, my goodness. Political calls. I don't think, they obviously have my number because I haven't gotten phone calls, but man, did I get a lot of texts.
Yeah, I'm not sure who thought that was a good idea.
Well, I don't know. It's just part of where we are today. Yeah. So, now, obviously, as a father, I never said no to you. What do you think this chapter is about?
Well, I think we've gotten into a society where everything has to be nice. There isn't really much room to disagree with anybody. So, reading this chapter, it's kind of hard to change that mindset of course, the yes is you achieved it, you're successful. Mm-hmm. That's, we've put that behind what yes means. Mm-hmm. But in a negotiation setting, you don't want, of course, a yes right off the bat to agree to the $1 million deal or whatever is great. Mm-hmm. But, we're still trying to benefit both parties and make sure that both parties can come together and carry out the deal. Mm-hmm. I think a lot of people forget that it's a two-party system when you're trying to get these projects and stuff done. So you have to make sure the other person understands what's going on and helps you achieve what you need to do while you're doing that at the same time. Mm-hmm. Or else that can cause a lot of friction on the back end after the agreement, and it could lead to an unsuccessful deal ultimately.
Mm-hmm. Well, and, the other piece to remember, too, is that when everybody's saying yes, there's really, you have to be a little careful because until you actually get to a no, and this is back from, sales 101 or whatever you want to call it, selling and negotiating doesn't actually start until somebody says no. Now, I have been in situations where I've walked in and, the guy was just going to be saying no because he liked to say no. It was kind of his thing. But the idea is that until you get to a no, you don't know what the objection is or what the concern is or what needs to be addressed. So in a sales environment, it'd be the no tells you it's time to, it's something to overcome. I think the more, the bigger picture is not to look at it as something to overcome, but something to listen to, because that's when you start figuring out what may or may not interfere with a good resolution coming from the conversation.
Well, and it's getting all the details. I think when you go into negotiation, you're seeing it from your side. Once they give you the no, it opens up the conversation to the details that they're not seeing from your presentation or, what you're providing them. So it's providing clarification and also catching those little details that may have been overlooked or, not even considered at the end of the day.
No.
So, but yeah, back to the, this, I think I came up with the word of the unauthentic optimism, where everybody gets this, the trophy, the participation trophy and stuff. We're not really good at, I don't know if friction's the right word, but we're not good when people don't disagree with us. And I think that's why a lot of projects fail ultimately. In my doctorate program, we're talking about cognitive diversity, is bringing in other people to see those different angles or bring in their other experiences of why something might not work in the whole scheme of things.
Well, and that's, that's, so the challenge we have sometimes is these ideas get so, they take a little bit of a detour and they just keep going. So in the DEI that you brought up, there's a lot of discussion now that we need to do away with DEI because it took one of those little turns and went down a path. The idea, like you said in your doctoral studies, is that you get a diversity of ideas, and that is not reflected by necessarily or really in any way, the way that DEI was being projected out into the marketplace. It was like, you got to have X percentage of these and X percentage of these and X percentage of these. And the fallacy is that changing how things looked would change how people think. And that is not where diversity comes from. Diversity of thought comes from embracing different traditions of thought and bringing them to be a benefit to everybody. So,
yeah, the adversities. I think we're lacking a lot of adversity these days. A bit of learning from the experience. Not that adversity has to be a bad thing every single time.
Well, and again, so it's that. And I'm trying to think of a really good word to describe the process where a good idea kind of devolves into something really terrible. And so on the one side, yes, we have this false
security.
When you're being good mannered and you're just being, okay, we're not going to disagree. We're not going to have any friction. We're not going to
politically correctness.
Yeah, we're all going to get along. And it puts everything in the basement that needs to be addressed. And then on the flip side of that, you have some people who are just, oh my goodness, violently knows on anything because it came from somebody who isn't 100% of their religion. And I'm using religion in a general term as applying to political parties and religions and belief systems. Because, if they came up with it, it's got to be terrible, which is the antithesis of equity and inclusion. If you can't even deal with an idea, how are you gonna negotiate anything?
Well, it's breaking away from that groupthink, because what DEI was trying to do, but they've almost incorporated more people that think the same, that they're trying to fill the positions of those certain variables, or word mouth.
Yeah. So, I mean, and again, even in this conversation, this short conversation, we're kind of devolving the same way, where we started out talking about how to negotiate and a specific piece of work by Mr. Voss, and now we're allowing the social pressures that are in the mainstream right now to take this conversation down a weird little path. So it's that kind of corruption of ideas that has gotten us to the point where we are. Just one guy's opinion, and that is not something stated by Mr. Voss in his book, but it gives some good basis for conversations to increase understanding.
Well, the reason why you need the no, back to the chapter of the book. And as I was reading it, it obviously is very hard to wrap your mind around it a bit, but it's very grounding to the conversation and sets the table for the conversation. If you're not just led astray by the yeses, because the unauthentic optimism, as I had mentioned before, how many projects have we gone into that everybody agrees on everything and then it never gets done?
Right.
situation.
And the other thing you have to be careful of, and a no will help you get to the bottom of, is kind of the false promise premise. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
so in a number of the different sales backgrounds that I've worked in, what I have noticed is there is a push to get somebody to say yes. Because once you get people saying yes, they will say yes more often in the conversation. So let's say you were buying a car and you get down to the initial negotiation, you've agreed on the price of the car. All right. So it looks like a good deal all the way around. Okay, great. Yes, that looks like a good deal. So then they take you from the salesman desk and they walk you over and put you in, and whether they call it the finance office, a sales office, whatever it is, now they're going to try and add on a whole bunch of yeses because they've gotten you to say yes. And now if you say no, there's a feeling of loss. Oh, what if they won't sell me the car if I don't say yes? Or what? Oh, and so it's a, and I can't even name the name of the psychological process, but once somebody says yes, then it's easier for them to say yes and yes and yes. So even though you agreed to something up front that was pretty straightforward in writing, here's what you're getting and here's what we're going to give, and once you said yes, you have to kind of protect yourself from just continuing to say yes going down the road. So a no can, as we discussed up front, can help you with defining an objection, but it can also help slow the process if you start feeling like you're being steamrolled because you started saying yes, and now all of a sudden you can't stop saying yes.
Mm-hmm. Well, and depends on the ethics of the salesman. Do you want the happy
What?
customer?
Salesmen have ethics? Is this new? Did I miss a memo?
Well,
I'm sorry.
When you were doing car sales, obviously I got to hear the dialogue of,
Mm-hmm.
I don't think this guy has enough money to do this, but they qualify. But
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we also saw you have a lot of customers come back after the sale and say they weren't happy, or not saying it was you, but other salesmen on the floor had a lot of customers come back and return the cars because they probably got on that momentum of yes and didn't realize the other options that could have happened or could have been presented, or I don't know. I guess, do you have any insight on that, on the returns that happened?
Well, so here's something you have to be careful of is as we grow our bureaucratic state, we quite often will look at a situation and we'll say, we're going to pass some laws to protect consumers. Nobody's going to have a problem with that. We're going to protect consumers. We're looking out for the people of the United States. But the challenge is once you start putting in a lot of laws, it then changes the dynamic of how deals, for lack of a better term, in a general sense, can be negotiated. So, in something that you would think is going to protect everybody, like a Consumer Protection Act. Let's say the federal government passes a Consumer Protection Act, and in there it says you cannot prejudge somebody based on appearances. That sounds like a good concept, right? So let's say you've got somebody who wants to buy that car or take out a loan, and they're saying, oh, I really need this and I got to get to work. And as you know, for me, it's the dad gene kicks off and says, man, oh God, oh man, that seems like it's going to be a lot of payment for the amount of money they're making. So in the back of my head, I'm having this discussion about looking out for their long-term best interest. But what the law says is you cannot, what's the word I'm looking for?
Discriminate?
Not discriminate, but if you tried talking them out of it, you could actually be breaking the law because you attempted to, hey man, are you sure you want to apply for this amount, or are you sure you want to buy a car that's expensive? Just the fact that you are attempting to keep them from making a mistake and overextending themselves, you could be breaking the law because you were. And yeah, I mean, ultimately discriminating against somebody based on appearances and the limited information that you derived at that point But yeah, we have these crazy situations where we've tried to so protect people from their own bad judgment that we make it illegal for somebody to actually say, hey, I'm concerned about this. So it's kind of crazy.
Well, I mean, I've seen that recently with athletic training is, of course, we want the patient to make decisions that best suit them due to their personal preferences, the context of the situation, all that. But I've had a hard time on my end when we're clearing athletes for pre-participation exams, or they come in and do their testing for preseason and they don't meet the mark at all, like totally way out there. And I've had the hard time of, well, they're not physically fit to come into this sport at this moment in time. I don't think that they should be cleared to play, but that's looked at as discriminative. I don't, if I'm a medical professional that understands the different dynamics that go into a healthy athlete, I think fitness would be one of them. But I can't make a recommendation that they probably should not be cleared at the moment. And then they go and push themselves at, going 0 to 100 into the preseason, the 2-week hell week or whatever, and they hurt themselves with an overuse injury or an acute injury or something. And I just feel pretty discredited as an athletic trainer that I can't help direct that athlete to better decisions ultimately.
Right. But that also goes back to, there's constantly stories that come up about individuals who are able to beat the opinions of professionals. Okay. And there's a whole psychological thought process on when somebody thinks they know more than a professional, but it's, and that's the challenge. There's the balance. Okay. You have an individual who has a very firm drive, okay, I'm going to push myself hard. And that's what it takes to be successful quite often. But how do you temper that with, okay, somebody like yourself, an athletic trainer who comes in and, hey man, here's some issues, and then the athletic trainer doesn't get the support of the coach or potentially another doctor who isn't as close to the athlete as you are. How do you see being able to negotiate that conversation being beneficial to the athlete? Ooh, that was a long thought in there. Whew. Had to take some pauses to get all the words out.
Yeah. I mean, the patient-centered care is what we do as athletic trainers. But yes, I think it's sometimes having that hard conversation with them and at least laying the cards out on the table. I don't know if you can exactly tell them no. There's a lot of rules and regulations around that at this point. As long as they're cleared by a medical doctor, as you said, they may be distanced from the actual team and never show up, but they check the boxes that they are physiologically healthy, but they never look at the actual fitness or function of the athlete. And so I think that's one of the hard things that I've had to deal with as our example goes down the rabbit hole. But
so what things as an athletic trainer are you looking for as we see athletes go down the rabbit hole? What practices do you think are going to help athletic trainers have more credibility when they're talking to the one-on-one with the athlete to help modify their behaviors so that it's a healthy participation as opposed to a going to go until I drop level of participation?
I don't know if there is one way. We work with a range of different levels of athletics. I'm thinking collegiate specifically, where we have athletes come in that did not prepare at all over the summer and then decide to jump into season, going 0 to 100 basically. But I don't know if it's providing more resources. I don't know if it's taking a step back and looking at how the periodization of preseason actually works. Maybe I mean, it's dictated by NCAA for some colleges if you're in that division, but the access to the athletes and then changing the mindset of the coaches of, okay, if you have half your team come and not fit, then you probably should change your expectations of what you can expect out of the athlete in their performance and probably focus on a different coaching strategy. But I think some coaches get very narrow-minded and they know the skill set that's supposed to be coming in and they keep pushing the plan, and that's where it kind of deteriorates at that point.
That's where the no can come from.
True.
So let's say you've met with an athlete, you have concerns, and you've talked to the athlete, and the athlete says, "Well, coach is depending on me to get out there," and so they've got themselves mentally in this very positive place for goal achievement. Oh, I gotta go. It doesn't matter. I'm gonna play with the pain. Okay. And so then you try and have a conversation with the coach, and he's like, I don't know. What do coaches say when you bring up a concern and they don't want to deal with you? What's the go-to response?
I don't know. I think they just turn and walk the other way sometimes.
Okay. Or like,
let's say you're at.
Let's say you sent them an email and you said, "Hey man, I have these concerns," and
it's usually
it goes into
what else
ether,
can we do?
And nothing happens. They don't respond, right? So here's where a no could be very useful. You can send them, instead of saying, "Hey man, I met with Jack Spratt, the champion candle jumper, and he's ready to go, and he's going to go for the gold, and blah, 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 blah. But we have some second-degree burns on his buttocks from the last time he went for a record, and we're worried about him, and we need to adjust his training," and you never hear anything. So then a no would be useful if you sent an email and said, "So have you given up on Jack Spratt?" And of course, the coach is like, "Oh, Jack Spratt's my golden boy. I got to have Jack Spratt jumping candlesticks, man. Come on back." And so they'll come back and say, "No, I have not given up on Jack Spratt." And all of a sudden, now you have the ability to have a conversation about Jack Spratt's second-degree bun burns.
Yeah. Those are very common, too.
You're treating a lot of candle jumpers, are you? I did not know that about your school. Oh, you know what? I bet it's a cover-up. It's Drexel doesn't have candle jumper injuries. It's dragon injuries. I think their dragon is the problem. We might have to talk to Drexel University about their cover-up of the supposed candle jumper butt burns. Yes, we've started a rumor. You heard it first right here on To the Bone. A completely made-up sport that is having a high degree of injuries of second-degree burns in the... Yeah, okay, moving on. So what do we take away from trying to get a no? What are some of our key lessons that we're looking to get at when we try and get a no out of somebody?
Well, one of the examples we had brought up was the yes momentum, is trying to slow that down, have people think about what's going on and the information that they are being presented and making sure that they're able to clarify what's going on. That yes culture of everybody's agreeable, but once you throw in that random question where they're like, whoa, wait, what am I signing up for?
Well, and so that's probably the next point. No is not a failure. Okay, no is not a failure. And I think probably my favorite one, it took me a while to understand this because I was like, what the heck are you talking about? Is the waitress question. So the waitress is going to come by and she's going to ask you if you want a drink. She's going to ask you if you want ketchup. She's going to ask you if you want dessert. And at any one of those, you could say no. Now, does the waitress fall on the floor and throw a fit because, you said no to me, you didn't take my ketchup? No, they don't. It's just, it helps them determine where you're at and what your needs are. Oh, no, I don't need any ketchup. Man, you got any mustard? Oh, well, there we go. She had no idea that you were one of those weird people who puts mustards on their French fries. And so now she can meet you at your need because she got the no out of you.
Well, recently I saw, and we obviously are looking at a micro group of being in your athletic department or whatever. But going to the next scale of things, trying to get a business deal or a negotiation of investors or whatever, I saw that Canva, the website where you can design your own content for, marketing, all that type of stuff.
Right.
They were talking about how the owner, I can't remember her name off the top of my head, but she actually had so many no's. I think, within a few years, she wasn't really making any progress, but then she finally got an investor that said yes. And, it's a very integral part on social media and marketing aspects these days. And it's, even though we're talking about a no on a smaller sale conversation portion, but it might just not be the right person, and that no doesn't mean that it has to end right then. It's just you have to pivot and find the next person ultimately.
Well, and there's several stories of that to go way back.
Yeah.
A lot of folks today may not realize there was an actual Colonel Sanders, the chicken guy, right? And he went to hundreds of places trying to sell his chicken recipe. Now, if Mr. Sanders, Colonel Sanders, had given up at any one of those no's, he wouldn't have built the nationwide organization of chicken franchises that he did. And then, of course, the other one is Edison. He figured out 1,000 ways not to make an incandescent light bulb. And if he had stopped at any one of those attempts, America wouldn't be lit the way it was through Edison's efforts, and you'd have a whole different trajectory of how things would have rolled out. In an alternate universe where incandescent light bulbs were never invented, we are still dealing with gas lit lamps in your house, and 30% of you are going to burn down before you. Yeah, okay. So it's just because he kept going, he got a yes, which was, an incandescent bulb that can burn for hundreds of hours. Mr. Sanders got chicken across the country, and your website person finally got to put the product and the tools in the hands of people that she envisioned. So no's aren't necessarily negative.
End all be all.
Yeah, well, everybody gets really wrapped up. They said no, and it's like, I get it, because I was one of those people who, for the longest time, I took no's hard. I mean, your mother, God, she said no for 5 years. If I hadn't kept asking, you wouldn't be here. I'm just saying.
Well, and negatives can mean positive too. I mean, test results, you want the negative.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
The mindset.
Sure. Well, I know chlamydia this month. Great. All right. There's also, if you're falling down that staircase of yeses, where you said yes and then you said yes and you said yes, a no can is also a safety. So it gives the individual the power back in the conversation, that you can say, no. I said yes to this. I said yes to this, but no. I am not going with that. And like I said, in negotiations, quite often that is bubbling up, is one of the terms I use for it. They get you to say, well, if I could do this, would you do that? Yes. Okay, well, I can do this. And what if I did this? And so they're just taking little pieces, these small yeses, and it accumulates into the deal that is more their way than your way. So yeah, no is a way to make people feel safe when they're needing to put on the brakes in a negotiation.
Yeah. Well, he had a bullet point list of what no could mean.
What could it mean?
I am not ready to agree just yet. You are making me feel uncomfortable. I do not understand.
Stop touching me. Oh, I mean the no. Yeah, okay.
I don't think I can afford it. I wanted something else. I need more information, or I want to talk it over with someone else. Right.
And now, granted, some of those are dodges because the person doesn't want to make sense. That was when I, in a number of different industries when I was selling, that would be, well, I got to go talk to my wife.
Yeah. Bye.
And well,
never see you again.
Right. Yeah. We don't know where his wife was. We're not even sure if he ever found her, but he didn't come back the next morning like he promised me he would. Yeah, so some of the times those are a dodge. But again, it's that having the conversation, be able to have that discovery process of quite often, well, if we're going to use cars as an example, that's one of the things that when you're sitting down at the desk with them is there anybody else that's going to be involved in this decision?
Mm-hmm.
And then when they come back to, oh, well, I got to go check with my wife, you can say, now I thought when I asked you, there's nobody else that was going to be involved in the decision. And that's where it can get, you have to be very careful because that's when it can get a little bit,
Yeah.
Because this guy's kind of trying to dodge, dip, dive, and duck. And this
dodge.
guy is trying to close. And so when those go bad, that's when, that pushy salesman. And it's like, no, he just got you in your own trap. You set yourself a trap by saying you had the ability to make the decision, and then you didn't make the decision. The thing to remember is that you can say no.
Mm-hmm.
So let's say you get all the way down to where you're down to the brass tacks, and it's like, okay, it's time to and for some reason you just can't get your head around it. Say no. Say, hey man, thanks for your time today. You gave me a lot to think about. I'm so close to saying that I want to do this, but there's just something, and I would tell you if I could put my finger on it, but I'm going to say no right now. The risk with that obviously is the risk of loss. That car could sell, that piece of property could sell, the deal might change, which, some of those are real and some of them are artificial. The manufacturers or the people that are selling, well, hey, that deal ends tonight and you're not going to be able to get it tomorrow. Yeah. No, but you know what? Unless the entire economics of everything changed at midnight, there's probably going to be another deal. And it might be better. It might be worse. They might want to work harder to get you what you want. But if you're just not there, no is okay. Again, it's a safe place to be.
Yeah. Well, and then he had some follow-up questions. If somebody did give you a no, of what about this doesn't work for you?
Exactly.
What would you need to make it work? And then it seems like there's something here that bothers you. So it's, as the other chapters we had already discussed, you're trying to investigate and find out more about that person and figure out if it's actually going to work between the two of you or not.
Right. And those are fair questions. I mean, and a good, somebody who's in marketing or sales or who is good at negotiating will ask those questions. I think we talked about in the earlier chapters, the way that we do business in the U.S. today. And a lot of it is very buyer centric. I'm going to go in, I'm going to give you money, you give me the stuff, I'm out the door, we're done. And there's not a lot of conversation. So when people get into those conversations and you have somebody, a seasoned professional who's on the other side of the desk who isn't afraid to ask questions, all of a sudden people can start feeling pressure because somebody is actually asking them to put into words what their concern is. And sometimes they don't know what it is.
Yeah.
But again, that's why we have all those laws out there to protect them. So if 3 days into the deal, you're like, well, take it back. Depending on the industry, depending on the product.
Yeah. Well, and then back to your the project question of, do you want this to fail if you're not getting a response from someone? When I read that one, I understood it, but at the same time, I've just had not a lot of success with that type of approach because it feels so dramatic or so sassy or I don't know, like standoffish, I guess. And I think it's one of those mindsets of it is a quick, simple question to catch someone's attention. But if you keep dragging out the question, then you become dramatic and sassy and hard to work with. So that was just a side thought.
Yeah. Well, and again, it's quite often how we talked about nonverbal communication, and sometimes it's just the way in which the question is asked. You can ask the same question, and there was a group of English actors who were on stage, I mean, big names. So it was, I don't
Mm-hmm.
know what the event was, but each one of them took the exact same line of dialogue, and each one of them put the emphasis on a different part of a different word in the sentence, and they had this argument. And it was hysterical. I mean, it was dry British wit, but it was hysterical because the first guy would say the first word "I" is where the emphasis was, and these were all. I mean, I think Dame Judi Dench was in the group. I mean, that's the level of actors. So each one of them was able to give the line in a believable delivery, but the emphasis on each actor had a different word that he emphasized, and it was interesting how much that changed the conversation and what
Mm-hmm.
was being said. So again, it's so let's say you're on the other side of the negotiation and you're trying to get your the person you're working with to give you a no, so you can figure out where the boundaries are. Ask it with a smile on your face,
Yeah.
And then, what was the other thing we learned?
The pause.
There we go. The grand pause. Just put the grand pause in there and let them give you more detail. Or the other technique, repeat the last three words, go to your grand pause, smile. See, did all three techniques, and then sit there with, and look at them. Look them in the eyes. Don't look at the table. Don't look at the ceiling. Look them in the eyes and,
Yeah.
and wait for them to tell you what's going to make the deal happen.
Yeah. What else can we suck out of this no chapter?
Empathy. I think it was one of the things. I think what he called it was negotiate in their world. Okay, so you want to be, as much as possible, you want to know what the person across the table is thinking, what their drivers are, what is important to them. Because if you're going to address what's important to them, you'll be able to negotiate more effectively.
Yeah.
I think
real issues are brought forth.
Right, and I think that's we see that in a lot of discussions on the world stage right now. In that, in the United States, we have been so successful for so long, and we have so much that now we're negotiating about things that are made up, and that's really frustrating. I mean, it really impedes how well you can move. Speaking on it as a country, move a country forward, because now you have people who are just negotiating because they already got everything they asked for. So they're making crap up to negotiate on so that the negotiator can keep his job.
Yeah, keep making a paycheck.
Yeah, it's like, okay, we got everything we wanted in that last negotiation. Are people really doing well? What do we do now? Well, let's ask for the sun and the moon. Okay, yeah, because we got nothing else to ask for. And that's not to diminish anybody who's having a hard time. I mean, we still have poverty in the United States. We still have things that need to get better. But again, when you're negotiating on behalf of the entire country overall is still the greatest civilization that's ever happened in the history of the world, as far as the wealth and ease of living of the people participating in it. So how do you go to the table to negotiate for something when, if compared to any other time in the history of the world, you're at the apex?
Yeah.
Well, you make stuff up.
Well, I think you make more money talking around the subject than just going out and actually doing the action sometimes too.
Right. And again, it comes back to what is the other guy, the empathy of the situation. What is the other guy really looking for here? And sometimes it's just, like let's say you were a professional negotiator and you got everything that you needed last time. What do you ask for this time? Well, you have to have a reason for existing. So again, what this guy needs is he needs to have an argument with somebody so he can justify his existence. So sometimes that's all it is. Oh, we couldn't get him to budge, but man, we'll go back next time and we'll get him. He just guaranteed himself another year of employment.
Yeah. Well, it's just layering more regulations on top of regulations, like your example of we're trying to save people, but we're making it harder. And making people less informed ultimately on their decisions.
Oh, quite often. Because, it's, there's certain, man, again, I apologize. I can't remember all of the federal acts and regulations. And again, it's we'll pass a law that says, oh, this is a good intention. And then the law has to be put into effect through regulations, which are not voted on. They're handled by bureaucracies. And so often the intent of a big decision can be thwarted in the execution of it because the bureaucracy that has to make it happen may not be aligned with what the original decision was. And so again, if you're, let's say in I know you hit a left turn on one of your business, the mental what was it?
Mental performance?
Mental performance, that's right. Mental performance business, you hit a little bit of a left turn. And again, in that one, so a potential business partner is ignoring you.
Mm-hmm.
Get a no. Find out what's going on. And in that case, he had something else that looked shinier and brighter. And he, so it left you hanging. But it also, once you finally got the no, you figure out where he was going, it all of a sudden is freeing. Oh my God. Wash that man out of my hair. Get on with somebody who's actually serious about building this idea as opposed to whichever flavor of the week flashes in front of his eyes.
Yeah. Serial startupper, but bringing people together and makes the money off them.
And it's, and again, it is a business plan and it works for him. It just doesn't always necessarily work for the people who are going to do the work. So, and there'll be those. I mean, the president-elect, people love to give him a hard time. Oh, you've gone bankrupt 7 times. And it's like, okay, 7 out of how many attempts? If you look at the number of businesses that individual owns, a lot of them are very, very profitable. So are you going to judge them on the 6 failures out of 100 successes? 6% failure rate's pretty damn good.
Yeah.
So next time when we get together on To the Bone for the book club, we'll be going over chapter 5, and that is trigger the 2 words that immediately transform any negotiation. Dun, dun, dun.
What could they be?
Oh, well, you can either get a hold of a copy of Never Split the Difference by Chris Voss and read ahead so that you're ahead of us, or join us next time on To the Bone. Well, so I think that's going to do it for this edition. I mean, you can interrupt me. You can give me a no if you want, but I think we got. I got the.
No, I think we're good.
No, Wow, hold it. You gave me a no and agreed with me. What is that? You obviously have been reading. All right. Well, this is To the Bone, a podcast about athletic training, all things athletic training, including how to negotiate. I'm Randy Daly, helping out. Shelby Daly, your hostess with the mostest. Join us next time on the book club and keep in touch because she's got a whole list of folks coming up that she'll be spending time talking about specific things in the athletic training industry. That's it for today's episode of To the Bone. I hope we sparked some new thoughts, challenged your perspectives, or simply reminded you to dig a little deeper. Remember, life isn't just about what's on the surface. Sometimes you've got to cut deeper and get to the bone of what really matters. To the Bone podcast is a product of Daly LLC. It's hosted and produced by Shelby Daly, ATC, and Randy Daly. No clinical decision-making should be based solely on one source. While care is taken to ensure accuracy, factual errors can be present. For more on the show, visit www.tothebonepodcast.com. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe, rate, and leave a review. Get involved in the conversation. You can find us at www.tothebonepodcast.com. Drop us topic suggestions or be a potential guest. We're all about connecting with you, our listeners. Until next time, stay curious, stay grounded, and keep cutting deep.